what I'm going to address today is the massive erosion and movement of boulders, for which geologists require at least 23 ice ages, and that's already putting strains on one ice age post-flood, because, well, the secular geologists require a lot more, so it's not that easy. And it's a lot of erosion what we have to discuss about. I will show that ice sheets formed by volcanic winter in the flood year, and that the Pleistocene mass extinction of megafauna is end flood, and that the Babel dispersion marks the start of Neolithic revolution. And well, as I said before, I know I'm an outlier in this group, but on the other hand, I think this is just exactly what the church has always believed. So this is Sweden, well, Scandinavia. And a lot of these rocks from Scandinavia have been delivered in the Netherlands. And this shows some of the locations of the origin of rocks that are delivered to the Netherlands. During the Pleistocene, billions of stones have traveled 500 to 1500 kilometers to the Netherlands from Sweden. And the rocks range from small, that's why there are billions, because we have billions of small rocks over here. But there are also huge ones, like the biggest one we know of, that's 150,000 kilograms, which is an Uppsala granite. And the Uppsala granite that comes from this area, which is 1,000 kilometers distance from this village, this small village in the north of the Netherlands. Now, if we look in from this perspective, from Sweden to the Netherlands, well, I show here the origin of the majority of the findings are in this region, but we have some outliers like this one. It's displayed in a dolmens center here in the Netherlands, but we have some gneiss with granite from this area. So it's the distance that has been traveled to the Netherlands is over 1,500 kilometers. And maybe I could say 2,000 kilometers at the max. Now we have a problem up here, as glaciers don't quite slide horizontally. And that's the main problem we have to discuss. Glaciers flow always downwards by gravity, but this movement is horizontally over 1,500 kilometers. And also we don't have U-shaped valleys. Well, you all know that the main an important part of the evidence for ice age and for the glacier movements is that U-shaped valleys are left, and from a wide range, mountain range, then this ice narrows into a valley, and then there you have your glacier. But this area is also much too big for a glacier, as this is a broad front. This is not narrowed into a glacier. No, this is an enormous range of where all these boulders are, and well, it's all the range from London to Netherlands, to in Poland, I think, where we find these stones. And well, I will show more evidence later, but this cannot be done have been done by a glacier. So only fast-flowing water underneath ice could have caused this. And there's evidence for that. I will show a lot more evidence, but in this picture you see already the English Channel, which is evidence of a water gap. So there has been a lot of water flowing from north to south, eroding the English Channel. Now, here at the left you see the Netherlands, and this is the border of the Dutch part of the North Sea. So this is our border in the North Sea. And here you see this feature of buried valleys formed by spouting water underneath ice. And they are refilled now by clay, glacial sand, and till. Now, obviously, our border is not a marker for our, this feature will not stop at our border, it will go farther west, and this feature also goes farther east into Germany. Actually, I was in Germany in a mine where they digged out such a buried valley because the freshwater clay in it is very useful. So it's quite a kind of mining, and I attended there. But okay.
Steph, is the picture that you're showing there, is that the topography of the bedrock that then shows the incision
No,
by
it's
the water?
yeah, it's not bedrock. It sounds like rock, but this is the subsurface here is not hardened. It's not cemented. So it's all just sediments wherein these massive channels have been, yeah, curved out by water and refilled by water again.
Okay, all right. So it's sediment that's been eroded in these valleys and then backfilled with clay, glacial sand, or till.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
And here you see a detail out of it of about 80 by 160 kilometers. And actually, this picture, this research to detail, it was done with a helicopter over large areas, and researchers from Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands presented this area of this work exactly here in my hometown in 2006, and I was invited to attend their meeting, their presentation. That's how I managed to get this picture. But note that a single valley is even 320 meters deep. So this is massive erosion. This is not simple done, but simply done in an ice age. It's done by subglacial water, of course, but where does the water come from? And well, actually, I live. Let me see, where do I live? Somewhere I live somewhere here. This is my hometown, and so. Well, but it's all flat. It's all flat. But these are the buried valleys. They are refilled, and when the ice melted, what was left was a flat area. Well, actually, John, you were here in 2013, and so you have seen how flat our area was. But this was underneath. Yeah.
Steph,
Now
are
this
these
is.
tunnel valleys or are these sort of standard valleys? And what I mean by tunnel valley is,
Sorry, what's your question?
are these tunnel valleys?
These are the tunnel valleys, yes. This is an example of tunnel valleys, and they are found all around the globe. Yeah. Now this is the other side of the ocean. It's Kentley in Quebec, Canada, and here again you see how a pressurized subglacial debris flow caused marble to erode, because this formation here is all marble. It's a marble matrix material, which is calcium carbonate, but there is a granite obstacle in there, and you can see how the water flow and the debris flow has eroded, has acted on this hard material of the granite. And here you can see it in perspective with some flow lines, and you see how this granite obstacle caused a vortex in this rock to erode So this is another evidence that shows that water played the main role. In earlier days, secular geologists called this a remnant of ice age, as ice would have eroded this rock, but later by mainly Professor John Shaw, he has changed their mind now, and now is the mindset it's done by water. Now this is absolutely recommended video to watch. It shows much more in detail how all this erosion found place on this monument. And the maker of this video lives in France, and I've visited him over there once, and well, we had some constructive talks about this kind of things. There's another example of the tunneling, the tunnel valleys. This is the channelized subsurface with potholes by subglacial catastrophic water flow. And as Emil Silvestri, that's also a creationist, a young earth creationist, he said this is consistent with a transition from a high velocity sheet flow to a channelized flow. And that reminded me at our discussion a couple of months ago, where John Whitmore brought in this idea of that the channelized flow would be after the flood. But well, but here, at least, you see this transition from a high velocity sheet flow to channelized flow. So this has direct to do with our subject, what we are talking about, what was the end of the flood. Now you have the channeled scablands in Washington. That resulted obviously from Pleistocene glacial outbursts, but how could this erosion have been caused by a local flood from a fictional lake, Missoula? Nobody was around there. Whereas identical erosion occurred at the same time and latitude all around the globe. This is not something that happened locally. No, this is a worldwide phenomenon. And John Shaw in 2002 tributes a young earth creationist Douglas Cox in his paper, The Meltwater Hypothesis for Subglacial Bedforms. And he said Douglas Cox also outlined much. Hey, John has left. Oh, okay. Douglas Cox also outlined much of the meltwater hypothesis in a remarkable paper entitled A Diluvial Origin for Drumlins in 1979 already. And he uses much of the evidence that we use and appeals to the same hydraulic principles as we do. He deserves recognition for his work, which was published before ours. He suggests that land upheavals shed ocean water in immense currents. Now, I suggest they are both right. They are both right. Not one of them, no, they are both right. With their appeal to hydraulic principles, and also Shaw is correct about the subglacial bedforms. However, meltwater may not have delivered enough catastrophic force, because meltwater, that's part of a process. You need a melting process, and water will leak away. So you will never end up with catastrophic meltwater flows. Well, incidentally, it's possible, of course, but it's not the regular way of meltwater. Meltwater seeps away. And therefore, I think Cox is correct about the upheaval of the continents. That's what we see here as well. So I think their models just need to be recombined or combined in the recessive states of the floods. And that's what my position is, and this is what it shows like then. Then we come to the recessive states of the flood, where millions of cubic kilometers of water were available subglacial. Millions of cubic kilometers of water, subglacial water escaped catastrophical southward because of the rising of the continents at the same time. So that's what we look at. Now, there's more evidence for this claim. Here you see how massive Pleistocene flow across North America into the Gulf of Mexico. And the continent was uplifted in the recessive states of the flood. And then you see how molten salt interfingered with Pleistocene sediments up to nearly 10 kilometers thick. And note that solidification coincided with the arrival of Pleistocene sediment. The salt could not have remained molten for 700 years. Therefore, the Pleistocene is the end of the flood. It's as simple as that. And you see here these salt pillars rising up for 10 kilometers or more. And you see here the amount of Pleistocene, which is a huge amount of Pleistocene mud, to be honest. I know this salt, this black jagged formations in black, there are salt, but all this salt together.
An email, he apparently got dropped from Zoom for some reason, and he was having trouble getting back. It looks like he just jumped back in.
Yeah, John's back, I think so. Yeah. So this salt formation is over 2 million cubic kilometers of salt. So from this cross section, I would estimate that this Pleistocene amount of mud is also about 2 cubic kilometers of salt. So we are talking about huge volumes of sediment that came across by this water, subglacial water, including the uplift of the continents and all the water that has to be driven off of the continent, that altogether pushed Pleistocene sediment far from the ice into this Gulf of Mexico. So, and this salt cannot have remained molten. For the salt can interfinger with sediments only as long as it's molten, but it can't stay molten for 700 years. It's just not possible. So this all evidence puts it back to, pushes the ice age back into the flood evidence. And there is more, but now from another perspective. The young Earth creationist post-flood idea of an ice age is that there was, after the flood, warm water and cold continents. And then they refer often to texts in Job. And however, I think the Bible is diametrically opposed to this idea of warm waters. As Job 37, he talks about broad waters are frozen fast. So the waters are frozen, they're not warm. And then in Job again, when the waters become hard as stone, when the surface of the deep is frozen. So these texts, what are referred to by young Earth creationists to show that there was an ice age post-flood, these texts are opposing the ice age idea of a post-flood ice age with warm water and cold continents. And there are also the opinion of the church worldwide is reflected in this book from 1951, The Flood, written by Professor Alfred Rehwinkel in Missouri. And he was opposing an ice age theory. He says it's just a view of people, it's not a proven fact. And that has been translated to the Netherlands, and I think it's been translated worldwide. So that's the view, that has been the view of the church. When the church became confronted with the idea of ice age. And this was the first impression. And he gives a lot of evidence that this is all flood evidence and not ice age. Then here in the Netherlands, there was some guy in 1990, and he said, well, he was a geologist and did some research on all these subglacial water flows that he found. But he said, regarding ice age, humanity suffers from collective amnesia. There are no written records. There is nothing that points us into the direction that there was an ice age. Then we have a work of Steve Goldmer in last year and 5 years earlier as well. His works, his simulation, over a decade he's running his simulation, and he said, well, sorry, but thick ice sheets don't form post-flood. We can't simulate them, we can't get them done. There are no ice sheets, and the seculars admit the causes of ice ages are not fully understood. What they mean is that they have no clue how to build an ice age in whatever climate you need. So actually, a post-flood ice age is a difficulty for young Earth creationism as well. And there's another thing, I addressed already the warm water, but there is also the cold continents. As that's not that logic that there were cold continents post-flood, as there were steamy continents emerging out of the water of the flood. Because in the first place, they were formed out of warm sediments. These sediments were delivered by warm floodwater, so the sediments from the floodwater were warm. Yeah. Also, there were natural reactors, as uranium is present in continental crust only. So the continents contained the heat of this uranium, the natural reactors of uranium. Also, we have the large igneous provinces and the basalt flows. They are huge. They contain unbelievable amount of energy. Then we have the volcanic ice beds delivered upon the continents. They were hot. Then we have the igneous salt giants. It's hot. So the continents were not cold at the end of the flood, but they were steamy hot when they emerged from the water. But now, how do we get large ice caps during the flood? As they were indeed created during the flood, but how did that happen? Now, well, contrary to sediment layers, water volumes can cool fast by circulation. You need circulation. If you want to transfer heat from an object into another, into a cold spot, you need to circulate. And sediment layers can't circulate. So the continents, they contained their heat in it. They didn't cool, but the waters, they can cool fast. And there are thousands of tests done with warm water, but it's the funny thing with water is that warm water freezes faster than cold water. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but if you put a warm water bottle in your fridge, then it freezes faster than a cold water bottle. And why is that? Because the warm water starts to circulate faster. And it's the circulation that that creates the cooling down. And that's why it then freezes faster. So ice sheets formed during the flood upon the poles. It was just a volcanic winter because the clouds, well, we know from day one there were clouds, but there were also dust and volcanic particles floating high in the atmosphere. They have a cooling effect and cause a volcanic winter during the flood year. Also, the water bursting out of the great deep and steam from volcanic eruptions. They would cool down with 6.5 degrees Celsius per kilometer in the atmosphere in height. As there is a temperature lapse rate in the troposphere of 6.5 degrees Celsius per kilometer. The heat will be transferred vertically and will be transferred high up in the atmosphere, several tens of kilometers high up, and then return as ice. So you have an immediate exchange of heat. Above whatever hotspot you have on the continents, you will have an immediate exchange of heat going vertically upwards and return as supercooled ice. So it's all pointing towards ice caps was built during the flood. Now from a perspective of fossils, there are more human and mammal remains found in Pleistocene layers than in all other flood layers combined. So that is quite in conflict with the rainbow promise, with God's own promise to people to bless them. It's being repeated 3 times in Genesis 8 and 9, and we can daily see the rainbow. I think that at any moment in time, the rainbow is seen somewhere else, somewhere on the earth. It's always active, this this process. So this is a very important underlined promise from God, and so that absolutely conflicts with a post-flood ice age wherein we find more human and mammal remains than ever before. Any model that excludes the Pleistocene as evidence for the flood ends also up with no or almost no human remains, which is very odd, as the flood had to do with the sin of human. So where are these humans in the flood evidence? And also, the most large mammal species known as megafauna became extinct during the Pleistocene. And these are numbers. It's beyond. It's enormous. 15 million at least mammals in Siberia, maybe 150, but nobody counted them really. It's not countable. But there are numerous amounts of dead bodies, plus many more elephant-like worldwide. So how could they have multiplied post-flood in 500 years? How then? Tell me. Then we have other megafauna that became extinct: the woolly rhino, the giant deer, the giant wolf, the giant peccary, the giant vulture. I don't know. Continue. The list is endless. It's enormous what has been extinct, become extinct during the Pleistocene. And then also we have numerous remains of non-extinct megafauna, like the crocodile, the rhinoceros, the hippopotamus, and etc. They also have been found farther north than the Netherlands. So that shows already it's a mixture of flora and fauna from warm and cold climates that's been found in the ice age. So that indicates flood origin again. So all this point to ice age during the flood. Now, how did it work? I think that these animals ended up in ice and permafrost by frozen into the ice sheets while they were swimming or floating as dead bodies, and especially elephants, which are found especially in the Pleistocene. They have perfect snorkels, and they can swim. And even if they die, they keep floating. So they will end up high up in the upper flood deposits, and that's exactly where we find them. So also they can be covered by snow while surviving on the ice sheets. However, when they then these ice sheets interfere with the warm sediments from below, then the melting will start from below, and that will push these carcasses into the sediment sub-ice, which turned into permafrost after the cooling down of these continents. Now another piece of more archaeologic evidence for this. I've shown this particular dolmen. I visited this one with Mike Oort in 2013 when he was here in the Netherlands. And this is the New Stone Age, Neolithic. And over 54 dolmen are built here in the north of the Netherlands, maybe much more because these rocks have been used for all kinds of purposes in the last few thousands of years. There are still hundreds in Europe, and Stonehenge is a well-known one, and nobody knows how they managed to make this, to to transport these boulders. These boulders are up to 3,000 kilograms. It's not that easy to transport them. It's old. It's very old. Nobody knows. There is no written record. We don't know how they managed to make this. And that reminds me of something. And here you see the lifespan versus the number of generations from Noah for various biblical figures. I took this from creation.com. In the 6th generation, there was the Babylonian language confusion. And why was that? Because nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. That's what God said. Nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Why did God say that? Because they were able to build a huge town, the town Babel, and they were able to make a huge tower. And then from this Babel dispersion, they went worldwide, and that's why these megalithic structures were built worldwide. So this dolmen fits in after this Babel dispersion. And this is, here's the Levant, and here you see how the Neolithic revolution parallels the Babel dispersion, the transfer of the cultures out of the Levant, and there they went. And this is all over land. I took this picture from Wikipedia, but I think the main road was by water, as we found dolmens here abundantly in Portugal, here in France, on the coastline, well, in the UK, in the Netherlands, in Denmark. So I think that the main thing is transfer over water from Babel. But it shows how, well, this Neolithic, the new Stone Age parallels the Babel dispersion. And so in conclusion, I would say, well, again, Neolithic revolution started with the Babel dispersion. That pushes back, of course, the Paleolithic, that's the old Stone Age, to the late flood, indeed. So old Stone Age remnants were caused by refugees that were killed by volcanic gases and flood. And well, a post-flood ice age model is impossible. It's incompatible with the Bible and cannot explain any fact. So ice sheets were formed during the flood. The subglacial waters eroded tunnel valleys out of flood sediments and displaced rocks. And the post-flood boundary is end Pleistocene. And the melting of these ice sheets, that's not me.
Sorry.
The melting of these ice sheets and some tunnel valley infill, that is post-flood. So that was my presentation, and I hope to raise this flood boundary of all your models. I hope that I can raise it up with this up to the end of the Pleistocene. I think I've made a solid case, and it fits up very gentle with archaeology.
Good.
Thank you, Steph. That was very provocative, and it's caused me to rethink already just in these few moments. Rethink a lot of things I have taken for granted for a long time. So it gives me a lot of new things to process, to think about, to grapple with.